This is our second go-around on this race. We discussed the CD1 debate a couple of weeks ago, but let's get into this interview segment. Laura, just a real broad question. Could these candidates be any different? It's just very interesting watching them
very different.
in
Very
a
different
one-on-one.
on the issues, and very different styles, I think, from both of them.
Yep.
So yeah, we saw, and one of the things that was interesting is just the level of, for me, you know, it's interesting that Mr. Freese admits that he does a lot of contracting, his business is involved in government contracting, and yet his solution was to somehow trim back the budgets on a lot of these different agencies.
Right.
And I think
And
Gwyneth
Gwyneth did challenge him a little bit about that,
right.
sure.
And he still didn't exactly give specifics. He said he was willing to take the risk.
That's right.
But I think those specifics are important to a lot of people in this state.
That's right. Good point. Stephanie, your broad thoughts on those two candidates, and we'll get into some details here in a second.
Yeah,
but,
yeah, I thought the Congresswoman, I thought she did a really great job too in articulating her strategy and ideas for really moving New Mexico forward. And I thought she was able to bring in some clear policy positions as well as what she's done in the past in Congress. I think, you know, conversely, I think Mr. Freese actually, you know, I don't think he really had a good plan for moving forward. I think that he was, I don't know, I think you're right. I think they couldn't have been more different of candidates, you know. And
It's amazing, Merritt, how much information spills out of Michelle Lujan Grisham in 30 seconds. It's like this torrent to keep up with sometimes.
And I've liked this whole race in an increasingly hostile political atmosphere in New Mexico. I think this whole race has been very refreshing because it is upbeat. They're two very different people, but they're not tearing each other apart.
Thank you for mentioning that.
I've been joking. Michelle Lujan Grisham is running for nicest lady in New Mexico. She loves the elderly. She loves organic vegetables. I'm hoping, I would like to see puppies leading up into the election. No, I thought she did very well.
Sure.
She's clearly she's clearly worked policy issues for some time and experience as a county commissioner. But I like Dr. Mike Freese. I get both phone calls in my house. I'm in a mixed marriage politically, and I hate the telephone. And his calls are the only ones that just don't send me through the roof because they're polite. He's doing something different. I don't think he's funded to the level that it can be successful this time, but I like the tone he's taking and I like his approach.
You know, he's been here before a couple of years ago, and he's a super bright guy. And it's interesting how much of him doesn't come out, Carla, when you watch these interviews. It's a tough thing to do when you're running for, it's not really him, you know what I mean? But that, regardless of that, were there anything that you heard from Mr. Freese that would say, look, the ultimate question is, can a challenger move votes? Can a challenger give a voter a reason to not say yes to the incumbent? Did you hear anything in that interview that would make a voter do that?
Well, I think that Mike Freese was going more for the fact that we've got this debt that the United States is facing. And so his position, I think, is more of, we need to pull back the reins and we need to just focus on that. And so while he wasn't specific on some of that stuff, that's his overall theme, that we've got to get the government back in control.
Right. And part of that, of course, was he wants graduates to have a job waiting for them. That's how people stick around. They feel like if the economy is better, then everything's going to work that way. It seemed a little simple, that premise. How did that strike you as a platform?
I mean, in utopia, of course, it would be great if we had that, but it's been many years since anybody felt comfortable coming out of any educational program and there was a job waiting for them. I just don't think that's realistic right now. And we have so many jobs, not just for graduates. I mean, graduates at least are able to fare a little bit better when they come out, but we have a lot of people who are unemployed or underemployed that don't have the educational opportunities. So I think that some of that sort of utopian view, coupled with the idea of trying to shrink government in certain areas, just doesn't really make sense, because so much of being able to get your education involves the federal government, Pell Grants, and other federal aid for that. So I think there's a lot of details that just didn't seem to make sense in the comments.
You know, Stephanie, on the district-specific stuff, one of them was the Kirtland spill, which Ms. Lujan Grisham spoke to. However, there was a however here. I appreciate where she was coming from, but I didn't get a sense that she has, to be flip about it, had her foot in someone's rear end on the timeline on this. Didn't sound like she was actually driving the situation in a way you might think a congressperson could be influential here. What was your sense of her relationship with this problem?
So my sense is that she does recognize the sense of urgency around it, but I think, administratively there's a process for investigation, and Mr. Freese referenced it as really knowing what the risk is. What struck me as odd and sort of contradictory, though, is when he talked about eliminating regulatory agencies' budgets, or not eliminating entirely, but definitely cutting. It really spoke to me. So what would we do with this Kirtland oil spill situation if the EPA did not exist? you know, and so that's a really important regulatory body. And
And when he was pressed by that by Gwyneth, he basically said that he didn't want to eliminate it. He thought that the regulations that were passed by EPA needed to be codified in law by Congress
Right.
and then signed by the president, which, you know, how can you on the one hand say you want to shrink government, on the other hand, you want to put it on Congress to start to get into the details that have already passed through a regulatory body? It just, those two things
not
don't
to
make
mention
sense.
basic civics and the fact that separation of powers exists for a reason, and that, you know, there's a clear role for Congress, there's a clear role for the executive. Merit, I know you were jumping in. I don't want to
No, I just
monopolize.
want to comment on shrinking government. And I'm a defense contractor, and I'm a military retiree, so I'm a pensioner and a defense contractor. But I think where he's coming from on shrinking government, it's not cutting jobs, it's doing what we do a lot better. I think all of us who've worked with the government know that there are things that we should not be focusing on. On the federal level, the contractor footprint in Department of Defense and at Kirtland Air Force Base has just grown exponentially. I don't think we cut contractor jobs, but do we need to pay for all that PowerPoint?
That's a really good point, Merritt, and I think the Congresswoman actually, you know, she brought up a good point on water permitting and her actually voting against creating an additional process for water permits when one already currently exists in the EPA. So I think, you know, what Mr. Freese was speaking to was really about regulation and sort of moving regulation from one place to another and cutting budgets for regulatory agencies and using that to shrink government. So
right.
I think that, you know, I think that there's a way to do things in a more efficient way, and I think Congresswoman Lujan was trying to articulate that using the water permitting process as an example.
But Carla, also he mentioned that there was, if I remember this correctly, a certain risk we should be able to take about our water, staying on that for a quick second with the Air Force spill, that there's a certain amount of mathematics involved, and some magic line there where below that we should be okay and above that we should be concerned. How did that strike you as a premise when it comes to water, which is our most precious resource?
I don't think that any amount of spill is okay in the water, and I think it needs to be cleaned up. But I'd like to make a comment on the EPA issue. I think what he was getting at is something that is of concern to many of us, and that is the EPA has taken on a new role we have not seen before, and it's very aggressive. And so I think he's looking for more checks and balances on that issue. I'm not saying that going back to Congress is necessarily the answer, but I do agree. We need some other level to look at what the EPA is pumping out, because we've seen a new form and aggression with them that we've never seen before. And I don't know that it's all necessary.
Interesting. I'll circle back to the point Stephanie made, Laura, on the Michelle Lujan Grisham point about the two water agencies and how she was, it's almost like she was anticipating the opposition from Mr. Freese about that. Do you know what I mean? It seemed very, very, very cleverly wrought and put out there. What did that say to you when you heard that? That she was against an agency having two different things and we don't need them both. Did that work?
I mean, I think Michelle's very good with policy. I mean, she
Yeah.
really is the kind of elected leader that we hope to have, people who can actually connect with the electorate when they're running for office, but then
right.
can also, you know, roll up their sleeves and get deep into the policy. And that's the kind of person that Michelle is in general. I would expect that she probably understands that that's been an attack on the campaign trail before, and she's figured out a way to address it effectively. I felt that she connected well on that.
Yeah, there you go. Next up, Women in the 2014 Election, a special segment led by Martha Burke, a woman of many accomplishments, including the author of Your Voice, Your Vote, A Savvy Woman's Guide to Power, Politics, and the Change We Need. Stay with us.